All right, so you ready for this? Today we're going on a food adventure. Well, kind of.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
So we're diving into this list of animals people eat around the world, and, well, it's a wild ride.
Sounds interesting. I'm always up for expanding my culinary horizons, at least in theory.
Well, get ready to have your mind blown. We're looking at a top 10 list from the Top 10's website, but here's the kicker. It's totally user-generated.
Oh, wow. So we're getting like the unfiltered global perspective on what people consider food.
You got it. It's a total smorgasbord of opinions and insights, and, well, you'll see.
I'm all ears.
Okay, so right off the bat, we have the usual suspects, right? Chicken, cow, pig, fish.
Yeah, the classics.
The classics. But get this. Are you ready for this? There are over 19 billion chickens on the planet.
19 billion. Wow, that's a lot of chicken.
Right. It's mind-boggling how integral they are to, like, our entire food system.
Yeah. And think about the domestication process over centuries. It's really shaped human societies, hasn't it?
Totally. And it's not just chicken. One user even pointed out that over 1 billion people eat cow.
1 billion people eating beef. That's a massive environmental impact when you think about all the land, water, and feed needed.
Definitely a whole other deep dive right there. But let's move on from the heavy hitters. We've also got some familiar, but maybe slightly less common animals like duck, turkey, and lamb.
Right, and that's where you start to see some regional variations, right? What's normal in one place might be a delicacy in another.
Exactly. Like one user mentioned the, quote, delicious pop of fresh deer sausage. Never tried it myself, but now I'm kind of curious.
You and me both.
And then we have the wahoo fish. And apparently in Hawaiian, the name ono actually translates to delicious.
Wow, coming from a culture with such a rich history of seafood, that's high praise.
Right. Okay. Fasten your seatbelts because things are about to take a turn for the adventurous.
Oh, how so?
Well, we're moving down the list, and it's getting a little exotic snake, frog, octopus.
Now that's what I call branching out.
Yeah. One user even mentioned eating python. Said it was tough but tasty.
Python, that's definitely not your average Tuesday night dinner.
Not for me, at least. But beyond the you factor, it does make you think, doesn't it? What we consider exotic really depends on what we're used to, right?
Absolutely. It's all about cultural perspective.
So true. But what about, like, the bigger picture? What are the nutritional implications of eating these less common animals? And what about, like, the ecological impact?
Those are important questions. I mean, some species might be much harder to raise sustainably than others.
Right. Okay. Now, for a topic that's bound to get people talking, this is where it gets a little more sensitive, maybe. You ready for this one?
Hit me with it.
Dog meat is on this list.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's definitely going to spark some strong opinions. It's important to remember that what one culture might consider taboo could be deeply ingrained in another.
Absolutely. And the user who added dog meat actually left a very thoughtful comment. I think to really understand their perspective, it's important to hear their own words.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. So they wrote, and I quote, I am not a vegan, however. I find it funny how people talk about how much they love eating cows, chickens, and pigs, yet think it is pure evil for people to eat dog meat. Pigs are almost, if not just as intelligent as dogs and are omnivores like them too, yet are slaughtered in the millions to end up on people's plates. Same thing goes for cows and chickens, which people only see as food instead of sentient creatures that could feel pain, and nobody cares if they are slaughtered inhumanly. Frankly, I personally would not eat dog meat myself, however, in times of famine or for traditional or religious reasons. I would have no problem with people who eat it. Some dogs are raised for eating just like some pigs, or chickens are raised as pets and are never eaten. I dislike the dog meat festivals in China, though, since the animals are often mistreated. But I wouldn't mind it if only these animals were humanely killed, and I hate it when people use this to be racist against the Chinese and Asians in general.
Wow. That really makes you think, doesn't it? Like, we often have these very inconsistent ideas about which animals are okay to eat and which ones aren't.
It's true. Like, their point about pigs and dogs, that's something I've never really thought about before. We have such different relationships with them, even though they're both intelligent social animals.
Right. It forces us to confront our own biases. What are the cultural narratives that shape our perceptions of food? It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
It really is, and this comment definitely gives us a lot to think about. It's a really good point. It's easy to judge, but it's important to remember that everyone has their own background. This list really just shows how different our perspectives can be.
Yeah, for sure. And that diversity is not just limited to the animals. I mean, look at this list. We have jellyfish and kudu and bison. It's like a whole world of culinary traditions all rolled into one.
Okay? Culinary traditions. Speaking of, the next one on the list is horse meat. Now, that's not something you see every day.
It's definitely not mainstream, that's for sure. But it does have a history in certain cultures, especially like in parts of Europe and Asia.
Yeah, you're right. And it's not just about the taste, is it? It's often connected to, like, cultural or religious beliefs, too.
Exactly. Food can be so much more than just fuel. It can represent like history, tradition, who we are.
Totally. And speaking of history, we can't forget about pig. I mean, it's a staple in cuisines all over the world.
Oh, absolutely. Bacon, pork chops, sausage. Pigs have been a part of human societies for a really, really long time.
It's true. And then we have lobster, monkey, elk, moose. This list really is like a culinary world tour, isn't it?
It really is. It shows just how diverse animal life is and how differently humans interact with it. What's food for one person might be sacred to another.
Okay, up next is groundhog and squid. Now, that's something I'm a bit more familiar with.
Oh, yes, squid is actually a pretty sustainable choice when it comes to seafood. It grows quickly and doesn't have a huge impact on the environment.
That's good to know. It's easy to forget that what we eat can have a ripple effect on the whole planet.
For sure. Especially as we learn more about things like overfishing and ocean health, it's important to think about those things.
Okay, so we've gone from the familiar to the exotic to the ethically challenging. What's been the biggest takeaway for you from this deep dive so far?
I think it's the fact that there isn't one right answer when it comes to what's okay to eat. There are so many factors at play: culture, ethics, sustainability, personal beliefs. It's complicated.
Yeah, I've definitely challenged to think about my own food choices and the impact they have, more than I ever have before, really. Going through this list, it's kind of amazing how much our upbringing shapes what we think of as food.
Totally. What seems normal in one place might be totally weird somewhere else.
Like, yeah, the whole dog meat discussion, right? Really made it clear how much culture influences our ideas about what's okay to eat.
Yeah, those cultural norms are powerful. I mean, think about all the different dietary restrictions people have for religion or ethics or health. Food's really tied up in our values.
It is. Makes you realize there's no one answer to what's for dinner. It's a global conversation, basically.
Right, and that's what makes it so interesting. It pushes us to step outside our own comfort zones and see how other people approach food.
So, looking beyond the list itself, what do you think this tells us about how humans and animals connect overall?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it shows how much we depend on animals, but also how we can be both caring and, well, exploitative.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. We use animals for food, clothes, companionship, but we also have this responsibility to treat them right.
And that responsibility gets even bigger when you think about climate change and protecting biodiversity and making sure our food systems are sustainable.
It all connects, doesn't it? What we eat affects way more than just our own plate.
Exactly. This deep dive has been a good reminder of that. It's not just what we eat, but how our choices affect everything else.
Well said. We've covered a lot, from the everyday stuff to the really unusual and the ethically tricky stuff.
Yeah, definitely given our listeners plenty to think about.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with one last thought. As you go about your day, think about what you're eating, where did it come from, what's the story behind it, what choices are you making, and how do they affect the world?
Love that. It's all about being mindful about our food and knowing that our choices have consequences, beyond just ourselves.
Absolutely. So until next time, happy eating and happy thinking.
Bon appétit!